Hi everyone and welcome back to Warno. Today we're going to do a 35th VDV deck build. They're basically VDVs, even if they do have a different name here. But they're a little bit different to the 82nd. I don't think they're quite as good. So we'll be building the deck a little bit differently and relying on other things rather than just the amazing infantry that the 82nd get. Unfortunately, we don't get any of these 10-man squads or the 12-man command infantry squads here. But we will work our way through. Now, the first thing we're going to do is take a look at these logistics items. The big thing is supply here more so than the command. So supply, you are rather limited to these little jeeps which carry 250 each, and I feel you have to take them because you need something that can get right up to the front line and can be spread about everywhere. So I take them with the disappointment that I don't have a fob to send them back to. And equally the disappointment that I can't bring in the MI-26 here and use that like a fob. I cannot bring that in. Like in Wargame, you could bring it in, park it somewhere, then drive other vehicles up to it, and it would rearm those other vehicles, like the other supply vehicles. It would refill them. You cannot do that here for some reason. Either it's not enabled, they haven't added the code, I don't know, but you cannot do it. So your MI-26 has to be near the units that it wants to resupply, rearm and repair. And that is really risky if you're getting it near the front lines. So for me, because of the cost, yes, it's got a massive amount of supply, but the fact that I can't use it as a mobile fob, I'm going to completely ignore it. I am going to take these choppers though. They have less, they're cheaper, but at least I can use them to do stuff a little bit behind the front line or risk getting them a bit closer. I'm not going to be quite as upset as I would be that getting blown out of the sky. Then in terms of your command vehicles, I would grab this because you get 4 of them and they're forward deployable. They're just a little jeep, which is fine. Don't get too overexcited at the start of a game about spamming out command vehicles though. Remember that they are expensive and often you could buy 2 squads of infantry for the cost of 1 command vehicle. So sometimes, yes, it's nice to get a bit of a foothold and get some early points, but you know, if your enemy hasn't done that, they could quickly overwhelm you with numbers on the front line. In terms of the other commands, I would probably take one of the 2 armoured ones. I still don't like choppers. Sorry, choppers. I think this one is 5 points more for a machine gun, but it's slower. So I'd actually get the BRDM-2U if you're going to get one of these. I'll leave it blank for the moment, but I would consider bringing a second one here. Because I have noticed, you know, depending on the side that is taken, it is common to snipe CVs and you might want spares. But let's move on to infantry. Now infantry, as I say, is not as good as the 82nd Airborne Division. The 82nd Airborne just have more selection. They have bigger squads. And, well, I just think in general they have the upper hand here. But in fairness, you know, there's still some reasonable stuff here. Commanders, you're already in a major letdown because the biggest command squads you can get are 7, which are the Spetsnaz, and the Descent Command, which they're all okay. This one has a Vintoris, which is nice. Honestly, I would take this one with the Igla, though, personally. It's a little bit more expensive. You can bring it in different vehicles if you want, including the BTRD, but the grenade launcher on it isn't that good. So I'd just bring it in a UAZ. Keep it as cheap as possible because it's already quite expensive. Now, forward deployable troops. The Sapri here, very disappointingly, don't have satchel charges. They just have a RPG-7. I don't know if that's a mistake or intended. So get the Sapri RPO instead. You don't get many of them, so I'd actually take both of those because you're going to want something that can kill enemy infantry. Then you've got the option of this long-range stuff. You've got the SPG-9, the Faggot, and the Conkers. Obviously, personally, I would take the Conkers. All of these have the option of coming in the robot as well, and the robot has a Cock-On missile, which is very good. Obviously, if you take it as one of these guys, which have Elite, you do get the option of taking the Cock-On, which would get 68. But I'd actually take this guy, the Conkers, because for me it's the best. And I'd still take it in the robot. I'd pay the extra, because you're getting 2 really good or reasonably good missiles. Now, the SPG-9 is very good for getting behind enemy lines and taking out reinforcements and things like that because they do have a decent range and they have quite a high fire rate. The accuracy isn't great, but it's better than nothing. Certainly something to consider as an option. I'm not going to bother myself. But some people certainly would favour that, and I don't see it as a bad thing. For 45 points, you could get some early shots on the enemy when they're reaching the front lines. So, it does have its benefit. Personally, I'd rather rely on the Metis launchers down here. They're not going to hit maybe as often sometimes, but they're scarier and have slightly longer range. So I would take those guys in a Gaz. I know I'm skipping ahead slightly. I'd consider taking 2 squads of those, but we'll come back to it. So I wouldn't bother with either of these vehicles personally. You've got these guys, but they're not forward deployable, and they only come in a chopper. Spetsnaz, very good. They come in a chopper, which is quite expensive, but they do have a very good RPG-29. And, you know, they're obviously Spetsnaz, so they're a decent squad. And they're a 7-man squad, which is the biggest you get in this deck. But the fact they come in a chopper makes me and ah over that. So I'll come back, possibly. Then you get these guys, which are BMDs. I'm going to take 2 sets of these in the BMD2, because right now the autocannons are king. And that's both cards of those taken. You can take them in a BMD1, and remember that these are basically the BMP1 and BMP2, but with less armor. So the cannon on the BMD1 is still very good. Then you get the standard squad, which don't have anything too special here. They just have the whole RPG 7 VR there, which isn't a bad thing. I'd probably consider taking either those guys or these guys. And really, they're very similar squads. The difference is the launcher, so it depends if you want a Metis launcher, or if you'd rather have a higher penetration, closer range RPG 7 VR. Remember, this is very close range at 530 meters. I'll come back to that in a moment. I'm going to skip ahead and I'm going to click this guy, because these guys are very good. They have 3 PKMs. Obviously, machine guns are still very good right now, so get a squad of those in there. When it comes to these guys, well, I'm sort of torn. I think the Metis has more versatility, so I'll probably take that. But I still have 1 activation point set left. And I think the Spetsnaz only come as a 6-man squad, and I'm really torn whether it's worth it for them coming in a chopper, to be honest. I don't think it is. You know what, I'd take a squad of these guys. I think that's what I'd do. It's a shame, because I wish the Spetsnaz were... I wish they were the same as they are in Wargame, and they have, you know, an RPO or whatever, something to kill infantry. But yes, we'll go with that. There are obviously plenty of options here. Take what you want. Just try and balance the cost versus what they have in terms of equipment. There are certainly better choices here in some respects than others. Now, artillery is really simple. Vasilek. Full squad of those. Just take them as veteran. They don't need to be elite. And then I'd also take the other Vasilek, because they are pinpoint accurate. They fire like grenade launchers, basically. Pinpoint accurate and over objects. It's amazing. They're supposed to be mortars, I think, but they fire like grenade launchers. They're crazy good. Crazy good right now. You can even take out armored targets with them. I haven't taken out a tank, admittedly, but, you know, a Roland 3, which, when I hovered over it, it said they couldn't penetrate it. I fired on top of it anyway, killed it in 2 volleys. So, you know, these things are ridiculously good. They're very good for sniping commands, incidentally. So, yeah, I'd just take as many of those as you could. I wouldn't bother with anything else here, personally. Then, moving on to tanks, your choices are garbage. There's no beating around the bush. They are garbage. You get 1 actual tank stack. And if you take it up to veteran, you only get 6 of them. So you're going to have to take them as trained, which is really annoying. You're going to want to keep some kind of command near them. You don't get any commands here. So with that in mind, I would probably hop back to logistics and add the BRDM to you, because you don't get any commands in tank, which is pretty crappy, because it means you don't get a properly armored tank, like tank commander to put at the front lines and take a bit of damage. I'd take these guys. The D44 cannon is pretty good. Obviously the penetration isn't great, but it is kinetic, so the closer you get, the higher the damage it will do. But they're very good. They act a bit like a tank just poking out of some trees. Obviously just very slow to move around. Then you obviously have the option of the Conqueror's vehicles, which aren't bad. They're at quite a reasonable price. You could certainly consider bringing those in, but save your points. I mean, take the Conquerors if you want. Stealth's good for these guys, and stealth is mediocre for these guys. But, you know, you get 9 of those. They're reasonably priced, and they're good enough. So if you fancy them, bring them. I'm going to move on, though. Recon. Again, it's a bit here, there, and everywhere. Obviously, you still have your forward deployment guys, the Razvedka. I'd take those. They're only a 4-man squad, but a lot of squads of Recon in this game are 4-man. The Razvedka Heavy, some people love these. They do have the machine gun. Spetsnaz crew, I think, are really good. They have a good RPG, and they have a Vintores. So I'd definitely take those. Unfortunately, you are limited to bring them in chopper, so it is a bit of an extra cost. And obviously, you know, you're going to bring them in as trained, or you're only going to get 3 of the damn things. I quite like the BRDM-1. It's got a little cannon on it, and it's got exceptional optics, and in this deck, it's a good enough option. I'd just take it as trained. You're trying to use it for its optics, not really for its cannon. You got the BRDM-2 up there, but it's only got very good. You could consider bringing a chopper if you want. Bear in mind that you do have 2 more single activation point slots there. So I'd probably consider taking these guys. You can get them in a BMP-1P, which is quite nice because it's got a missile and a cannon. And again, I'd take them as trained. And I'd consider taking a chopper. I mean, you've got that one, which is very expensive for what it is, and the Recon chopper is also quite expensive. But if you feel confident with choppers, you know, they can be handy. Even I like to stick them in a deck now and then. So stick them in there. They do give you a good range over mountains and things. Then AA, well, you are spoilt for choice. Not really. I mean, first thing I'm going to say is you take the Igla, you click the Skrizet, and you add them. You get 12 of them. They come with the Skrizet. The Skrizet is good in its own right against aircraft and infantry, so it's well worth having, and the Iglas are good as well, and they're reasonably cheap. The Strela is your other good option here, in my opinion. You know, they're just good to be sat at the back and, you know, providing good harassment. Obviously, their accuracy is not great. It doesn't increase much when you take the veteran. I'd just take it as trained and spam them all over the place. Obviously, you've also got the option of the ZU-23, but unfortunately, it is towed and isn't going to move and is going to be easily bombed. You can take them on a Gaz, though, which is a nice option as well. I don't really know the big difference here. That one has less rounds. Accuracy and everything's the same. That's all. I don't really know why they're the same price. I couldn't tell you. They're both 40 points. And for me, you'd be better off taking this because it's on a truck and is more mobile. I really don't know why they're the same price. This should be cheaper because not only are you paying 40 points, you're also paying another 10 points for the transport. And if you want to move it around quickly, you have to keep the transport on the field. So this is stupid to me. They should not be the same price. This one should be cheaper than that one. This one should cost 55. So it's the expense of the transport plus a little bit of cost because you're keeping the transport. I don't know. That seems bizarre to me. Equally, I'm not really enthused by any of these. Your air defense isn't great. So it's up to you, but I probably would just leave the rest of these blank. And to be honest, if anything, I'd consider taking these. Again, another stack of those. And at least you're spamming Iglas and Skrizets then. It's up to you. If you want to add something else there, please do. Let's move on to our choppers. We are going to be relying on choppers in this deck some of the time, so don't be afraid to spend some activation points here. You got the 2 sets of rockets here. Obviously, it's nice to have a cheap option, and you've got a couple of options here. You've got the 24V rocket, which has rockets, big rockets should I say, and it also has concons. And here you've just got rockets, rockets, rockets. But this one has a cannon as well. These are both good options. This one with double the amount of rockets is also good, but it obviously costs more. But slightly cheaper in the long run. This one has bigger rockets, but it's not bad. It's 100 points. The anti-tank one, I mean, that's not really particularly better than that one if we pin them together. The more expensive one has more smaller rockets and more concon missiles, but in the grand scheme of things, they're about the same. So I would take the cheaper one. I'd definitely take that. You've got the Akula, which you're going to take because it's fantastic. The Vikia is ridiculous, and its Igla Vs fire really fast. So, and it's got 4 of them, so take that. The problem with this one, oh, I think they've increased that. The Mi-24V AA, I'm sure that only used to have 2 anti-air missiles. Unless it's a different chopper I'm thinking of, that's probably more worth it now. If you want something anti-air, what's this got? Concons and rockets. Nah. 80mm rockets, 120mm rockets, we've already got one of those. When you get one of those though, that's a problem. Let's get rid of that. Let's take a second Akula since we get 2 Akulas. Because I think, yes, it's expensive, but I'd rather have 2 of those than just one of these in a stack. Let's take that for 100 and that one for the fact it's got just more rockets, but they've got bigger rockets. Leave it at that. Let's move on to aircraft and come back. Now, aircraft, again, you haven't got the best. Let's be realistic here. You got the MiG-29. I'd certainly take that. The MiG-29's pretty good. You get 2 of them. You could take some MiG-23 MLs as well. They're not bad. You could use them for killing choppers, but they're quite pricey for that job. Seed, you've only got the option of 1, but I'd recommend taking it. It's quite expensive, but it's better than nothing. SU-25AT, stick that in there. SU-25 cluster's pretty good. And remember, you've got very poor tanks, so take yourself a cluster. HE bomber, you've got the MiG-27, which has 4 500kg bombs, or you've got the MiG-25 down there, which has 8. I mean, I'd probably consider taking that for its 8 bombs, so you can do a proper carpet bombing. And just, it is expensive, just accept that that's an issue. You could take more MiG-29s. You could take the MiG-23. You could take a rocket attack jet. Rockets aren't bad. I'd rather have a SU-25 rocket, though, because it's got more armor. It's challenging, that. Let's have a quick look back through. I feel like I'm struggling here a bit with what to take next in this deck. I don't really want to take more recon. I'm debating taking more anti-air. Maybe we take the other MiG-29s and try and go for air superiority, since our anti-air is pretty mediocre. And then that only leaves us 1 point though. And we have nowhere we can spend a single point, which is a bit of a waste, so let's not do that. Let's go and spend 2 points in a couple of places. Fine. Let's take some more anti-air. Let's take more of those guys. Oh, no. More of those guys in the Scrizette. So we get double whammy. And screw it, let's take the BRDM2 Conkers and, you know, use those as vehicles you stick at long range in bush lines and in forests, and try and get, you know, long range shots on enemy tanks before they get within range. That'll certainly scare some people off pushing. Right, let's recap the deck. This was a harder one to build in my opinion than the 82nd. So we've gone for the little Jeeps for supply and the cheaper choppers. We've also gone for the Jeep command and a BRDM2U command because we don't get any tank commanders. Infantry, we've gone for the commander with an Igla. We've gone for Sapri RPO 2 stacks of. We've gone for the Conkers. We've gone for the Metis. We've gone for a BMD ×2, coming in a BMD2. We've gone for the machine gun squad, Metis squad again in a Gaz, and just some standard Desert Nicky in a Gaz. Artillery, we've gone for all the Vasilek. And tanks, we've gone for our only stack of T-80Bs as trained because we don't have much of another choice. Also, we've gone for the lovely D44 cannon because we don't have much choice. And we've gone for Conkers just to fill up some points. In terms of recon, we have loads of recon. We've got Razvedka, we've got Spetsnaz, we've got BRM1, we've got some Razvedka Heavy, and we've got an MI8 MTA. Then over in anti-air, we've got 2 sets of the Igla troops with a Skrizet as their transport, and we've got the Strellas. Then in helos, we've got 2 KA-50 Akulas because they are really good. You just need to be careful with them. We've gone for some rocket choppers of various types. One is bigger rockets, one is smaller rockets. Then over on the air tab, we have gone for MiG-29s for anti-air. We've gone for the MiG-25 Seed, the Su-25AT, the Su-25 Cluster, and the MiG-25 RBF HE because it's got loads of HE bombs. And that's the deck. And as I say, I struggle with this one a bit more. I don't know how everyone else feels. I mean, the options aren't as good as the 82nd, and the tank options are trash. It really disappoints me that they don't get a tank commander. And yeah, they're okay. I've played as them. We won a game when I was playing as them, but they don't feel on par with, you know, what is on offer from the 82nd. They just don't. Balancing will happen as time goes by. Thanks for watching, everyone. Please do like, share, and subscribe, and I'll see you all soon for some more Warno.